Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I am Brenda from Maryland in the USA. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the GreySheet, write it down, call it into my sponsor, don't eat in between meals no matter what, and God and abstinence are the most important thing in my life today. And a little bit about me is I grew up in a family with 8 children, and we lived in Panama when I was in kindergarten to the 4th grade because my dad was a naval officer, and he was an alcoholic. He found recovery for 36 years, but all growing up, he was not there a lot. He was just went to work every day, and we didn't see him in the evenings. And my mom had to take care of the 8 kids. And when I was living in Panama, it was summer year round, and I could play outside and climb trees and be active and climb the seawall and play on the gym and go swimming at night. And we were always active, bike riding. And then when we moved back to the States, when I was in the 4th grade, I was still active, but by the time I was 14 years old, in the 9th grade, my father was a raging alcoholic, and so I used food to stuff my fears and my anxiety, and I didn't know I was a compulsive eater, allergic to sugar, grains, and carbs. So from that moment on, I exercised. I lap swim, and I would swim the open water swims, like the Chesapeake Bay is 4.4 miles. And I would do that just to join the race, just so I would be burning calories. I wasn't really interested in fundraising or anything, but I did that through college, and I was like dining hall food, but I would always restrict and have the vegetables and try not to have sugars. But my mantra in my head was, I'm fat, I'm fat. Well, I came into GreySheet when I was 49. That's 10 and a half years ago. And my sister is in GreySheet. She brought me in, and then I got a sponsor. I always thought that I could lose the weight on my own. I never once asked God to give me guidance around the food because I was just in a diet mentality. So when I was 49, I just had a birthday. I'm 59 years old, and my life has changed since being in GreySheet, where many of the promises are coming true. When I first started coming to GreySheet, I went on the phone bridge meetings, and we can call in on the telephone and hear meetings. And I did that every day. And I started going to retreats. I went to the Connecticut retreat, the Malibu, California retreat, Myrtle Beach retreat. And these helped me meet other GreySheeters because we only had one meeting on Tuesday nights in Baltimore. And I drove there 45 minutes one way for the past 10 years until it went to Zoom. So I like the having the 12 steps in my life because that helps me when I came in, I lost 60 pounds and I've kept it off. So I'm 5'3" and I don't have to carry around that extra 60 pounds anymore. I'm just so grateful. I still wear the same clothes I wore when I lost the weight. And I was mentioning the 12 steps because the big book, everything in the big book, every time anyone reads the big book, I identify, and it's just so perfect for me. I fit. I'm not chronically unique. I can identify with people in the big book, and that helps me with the sayings. Some of the sayings I know by heart is the fact that I have to know the idea that I'm going to eat like a normal person has to be smashed, because my disease tells me, well, I'll just eat what they eat. They look thin, and I'll just eat what they eat. And I can't, because I'm just, I am a bottomless pit. I can eat anything. I don't get sick from any foods. When I got married, I had 4 children, and they're now 31 and 30, my daughters, and my sons are 19 and 21. And we lived in Ankara, Turkey for 5 years, and I was compulsively overeating international food. I went to the doctor in Turkey and they said, why can't you just eat one big bowl of this at breakfast? And I couldn't eat one of anything because one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And the same was after we lived in Turkey. We moved to Taipei, Taiwan for 5 years. And I went to the doctor there trying to lose weight, and they gave me some appetite suppressants, which was probably a type of like uppers or speed or something the doctor prescribed, because I would have insomnia all the time. But I want to focus on coming into GreySheet. When I moved back to the States, I started Al-Anon, another 12-step recovery. But GreySheet is I love grocery shopping for my food. I love preparing my food, and I especially love eating my GreySheet food. It's delicious. And I keep mentioning the 12 steps because right now I'm focusing on surrender, and that's step 3 for me. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. And that frees me up from my anxiety and worry and guilt. I made living amends to my daughters because when they were little, I was running around people pleasing, running around like a chicken with my head cut off, never, always people pleasing and never taking care of myself. So I was always irritable, discontent, and wanting to lose weight. That was my whole mantra. And so when I come into GreySheet, I no longer feel fat, but I also have the solution to my spiritual, emotional, and which is the fellowship and the 12 steps. I used to isolate. Now I make phone calls. Try to make 3 phone calls a day. Some days I don't do that, but I try to answer all my outreach calls that come in. And I have a routine and structure and discipline now in my life, and I never had that growing up with a family of 8 kids. It was kind of chaotic and noisy. And I like my serenity and sanity today. And I know it's because of gray sheet abstinence and not having the sugar, grains, carbs in my body. I feel like I've raised my sons in abstinence. And I always tell the story about how I joined Al-Anon, and my son was 7 years old. And he said, "Why can't you come to the Cub Scout meeting? Why do you have to go to an Al-Anon meeting?" And I told him I wanted to learn how to be less angry and more loving. And he said, piped up from the back seat, he said, "Well, you could always get a shock collar like the dog has," because that's how crazy I sounded when I got upset. And he thought, when you train the dog with a shock collar, that makes a change in behavior. So I said I have a structure to my day. I wake up at 4:45 in the morning, and I pray and I read my daily meditations, my literature, and some kind of gray sheet literature. And then I write in my journal, and then I take the dog out and feed the cat and dog. And then I make my abstinent breakfast, and I get on a 5:30 meeting. Then I eat my breakfast and call my sponsor at 7:15, get on another 7 a.m. meeting on the phone bridge, and take care of some house chores like the dishwasher and the dishes or the laundry. And then I try to make an outreach call. And it's just every day I do this, and it's meditative, and it's not, I used to jump out of bed and go, go, go. Never once bringing God into my life. Always self-will, always trying to run the show. But now I have peace and serenity, and I don't want to give that up. And another thing that I like to share is that I'm able to stay abstinent through no matter what. When I first came into GreySheet, my brother, who's 11 months younger than me, took his life. And I was able to pack up a cooler and drive to Indiana, another state, and go to his memorial service and be present. And I had all my food in the cooler. So that weekend, I didn't have to worry about my food. Another, no matter what, was my father needed kidney dialysis, and his health was failing. And I went to the hospital and visited him in the hospital. I would drive my mother to the hospital, and I would take my abstinent lunch in a cooler. And if I thought I was going to be late, I'd take my abstinent dinner as well. And then my mother, 2 years ago, she died of colon cancer. And it was during COVID. We didn't want her to go to a nursing home because a lot of people were dying in the nursing homes from COVID. So we brought her home, and I stayed at her house like every other 2 weeks and rotated with other family members so that she could live at home. And I took a cooler, filled up her refrigerator with my food, and just took my routine on the road. I would just weigh and measure at my mom's house. And I like going to the grocery store a lot now to get GreySheet food. And I have to be careful or I would go every single day. And another thing that I like is in the GreySheet has a 12 and 12, GreySheeters 12 and 12. And in the back of the 12 and 12, they have a list of freedoms. And I feel like I'm getting those freedoms. And I was planning on reading them, but I don't want to stall the meeting. And like also besides the freedoms, when you stay in GreySheet, the promises start coming true. Some of them for me is I suddenly realized that God is doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Another one is, my favorite is, I intuitively handle situations that used to baffle me. Because when I was in the food, I was baffled and befuddled and bewildered and exhausted. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I don't work outside of the home. So every day I take a nap for an hour and a half or 2 hours every day. During the day, I take a nap and then get up and start preparing my family's dinner and preparing my dinner and just keeping a routine. Sometimes I have a lot of time in between my meals. And lately I've been going back to lap swimming. Maybe I built up to 2 days a week. And I went this past Friday. Even if it was for 30 minutes, I got in the pool. GreySheets helps me have better relationships with my husband, and because I'm not crazy in the food and have mood swings and all over the place, I'm more calm. I used to scream and argue with my husband, but I don't do that anymore. I like the big book says, we cease fighting anyone or anything. And so I don't have to be right. I can just be happy. I can not have a negative attitude. Being grateful helps me with my negative attitude. I used to be like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, always depressed or suicidal. And I haven't had any suicidal thoughts for 10 years because of GreySheet. And today I look forward to my weighed and measured lunch and my weighed and measured dinner. And I'm going to ask God to direct me to do the next right action. And I don't know how much time I have left. I wasn't timing myself. And I think I'll stop there and say I'm so excited to be on your meeting.